Ever heard of a city spending over $1 billion just to keep football alive? Only to be left with nothing but debt, lawsuits, and a stadium nobody even wanted. Yeah, that's what went down in St. Louis. They called it the $1 billion curse. Stick around because this is one story you do not want to miss. Alright, let's get right into it. A city without football. Back in 1988, St. Louis had a football team. The Cardinals, not the basketball ones, the football Cardinals. But after years of mediocre seasons and an outdated stadium, they packed up and moved to Phoenix, Arizona. Just like that, St. Louis was left without an NFL team. And for a city that prides itself on basketball and football tradition, it felt like losing part of its identity. Fans were angry and politicians were desperate. They wanted to prove that St. Louis was still a big league city. So they pitched an ambitious plan. Build a massive domed stadium downtown and connect it to the convention center and make it irresistible for the league. By 1989, the city approved public bonds to fund this futuristic project. Taxpayers were locked in. The dome was supposed to be the ticket back into NFL. And in 1991, St. Louis even put in for a new expansion team, the St. Louis Stallions. The name was ready. The brand was ready. Construction started in 1992. But then came the heartbreak. In 1993, the NFL said, "Thanks for playing, but we're giving the new teams to Charlotte and Jacksonville." So St. Louis had a brand new dome, but no football team to put inside it. But wait, St. Louis thought they had another shot. James Orthwin, a St. Louis advertising mogul with deep ties to the Booch family, bought the struggling New England Patriots in 1992. And from that moment he signed the deal, Orthwin had one goal: move the Patriots to St. Louis. People in New England hated the idea, but back in St. Louis, excitement was through the roof. It looked like the city was finally getting its team. But here's one big problem. Robert Kraft owned the stadium in Foxborough, and Orthwin couldn't break the lease without his approval. Kraft refused, and instead of giving in, he fought back. He ended up buying the Patriots himself and keeping them in New England. Orthwin gave up and sold the team, while St. Louis was stuck with their brand new dome, but no football team to play in. The Rams arrive. Finally, in 1995, St. Louis got its NFL team. Georgia Frontiere, owner of the Los Angeles Rams, decided to relocate her team to St. Louis. The NFL team initially rejected the move, but under legal pressure, they had to give in. The deal, however, came with one big condition. The dome had to stay in the top 25% of NFL stadiums. Now that meant every 10 years, the dome had to keep up with the best new amenities, upgrades, fan experience, the works. If it didn't, the Rams could walk away. For a while, none of that mattered. The Rams played their first game in the Dome on November 12, 1995, beating the Carolina Panthers with a 28-17. St. Louis had football again. And oh, what a ride it was. Soon the team gave St. Louis fans something unforgettable, the greatest show on turf. From 1999 to 2001, Kurt Warner, Marshall Falk, Isaac Bruce, and Torrey Holt turned the Rams into one of the most exciting teams in NFL history. They even won the Super Bowl in 2000, giving St. Louis its first and only Lombardi trophy. St. Louis thought they finally had their happy ending, when really the nightmares were just getting started. Failed renovations and growing tensions. For a few years, the dome was buzzing, fans packed the seats, but like all good things, it didn't last. But by the end of 2000s, NFL stadiums were evolving fast. New venues had open plazas, retractable roofs, massive HD scoreboards, luxury suites, better tailgating, and futuristic designs. The dome, well, it was falling behind. The Rams tried to give the city some time. Instead of bolting right away, they accepted $30 million in minor upgrades, but deep down everyone knew the truth: the dome couldn't keep up with modern NFL standards. Fans were openly frustrated. The building looked boring from the outside. Critics, well, they said it looked like more a sad shopping mall than a stadium. Inside, it was too cavernous, too cold, and even when it was full, it was somehow felt empty. Even during the legendary Greatest Show on Turf years, it never had the atmosphere of Lambeau, Arrowhead, or Superdome. Sports Illustrated even called it the worst NFL stadium. Time magazine ranked it the 7th worst sports venue in America. And the fans, they stopped showing up. As the Rams' on-field performance tanked in mid-2000s, attendance plummeted. By the final season, the Rams were constantly at the bottom of NFL attendance charts. The Dome was supposed to be St. Louis's golden ticket. Instead, it became its curse. St. Louis wasn't totally blind to the Dome's problem. In 2009, they spent about $30 million on upgrades. New LED scoreboards, premium clubs, updated locker rooms, and even a fancy AstroTurf system. Well, that wasn't enough. In 2012, city officials proposed a $48 million renovation plan to add parking and improve fan experience. The Rams rejected it. So the city came back with an even bigger $124 million plan. The Rams shot that down too. Finally, the Rams themselves proposed their own plan, a $700 million stadium overhaul with a sliding roof and massive scoreboard, basically rebuilding the whole thing. Arbitrators agreed with the Rams, but the city couldn't come up with that kind of money. Taxpayers were still paying off the original construction bonds. There was no way that they could throw nearly $1 billion or more into a stadium that fans already disliked. The so-called curse was catching up fast. Stan Kroenke's big move. While St. Louis was struggling to find money, Rams owner Stan Kroenke was already preparing his escape. In 2014, he bought a 60-acre land in Inglewood, California, right next to the old Hollywood Park racetrack. At first, people thought it was just another one of his real estate deals. But then the truth came out. He wasn't just buying property, he was building an empire. His plan was massive, a brand new 80,000-seat stadium surrounded by shopping centers, hotels, housing, parks, and entertainment. And unlike the Dome in St. Louis, it wouldn't cost taxpayers a cent. Kroenke was funding the whole thing himself. Compared to that vision, the Dome in St. Louis looked like an antique. By 2015, Inglewood had approved the project, and everyone could see what was coming. On January 4, 2016, the Rams officially filed paperwork to move back to Los Angeles. Just a week later, the NFL approved it. In an instant, St. Louis was out of the league again. The cruelest part? Even after losing the team, taxpayers were still on the hook. The city owed $144 million on the Dome and had to keep paying until 2021. Now, for a stadium that no longer had a football team. Wait until you hear what happens after. The lawsuit. St. Louis wasn't going to let Kroenke and NFL just walk away. In 2017, the city filed a lawsuit against Kroenke and the NFL, accusing them of lying about their intentions and breaking the league's own relocation rules. They demanded over $1 billion in damages. Now, the NFL tried everything to shut it down, asking to move the case, blocking access to financial records, delaying hearings, but the court sided with St. Louis. Finally, in 2021, Kroenke and the NFL agreed to settle the case for about $790 million. It was one of the biggest settlements in sports history. The money was divided between the city, the county, and the St. Louis Regional Sports Authority, but almost none of it went directly to the Dome. If that's not a curse, what is? Life after the Rams. Now, after the Rams left, the Dome wasn't demolished, it got repurposed. Concerts, conventions, even a Taylor Swift tour stop filled the space. But for sports fans, it was an empty feeling. The NFL had abandoned St. Louis again, but the city wasn't ready to give up on football. In 2018, the XFL announced that it would place a team in St. Louis, the Battlehawks. Fans went wild. By 2020, over 29,000 showed up for the first game. And in 2023, that number jumped to a record-breaking 38,310, the highest in XFL history. But even now, the Dome is outdated. Proposals for upgrades keep coming up, but with estimates as high as $300 million just to make it competitive for concerts and college events. Other cities like San Antonio have spent far less upgrading their domes and landed major events like the Final Four. St. Louis, on the other hand, is still debating whether to sink more money into a building that has already cost taxpayers over $1 billion. Now, that's the true billion-dollar curse. Not just losing the Rams, but being stuck paying for a stadium that never lived up to its promise. With that, we've come to the end of this video. So what do you think? Should St. Louis spend hundreds of millions of dollars to save the dome, or should they tear it down and start fresh? Let me know in the comments, and hey, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more stories just like this one.